Hello all, my name is Jordan Mittler, and today we're going to be looking at securing accounts and understanding security and privacy on a whole nother level so you can go back to your personal devices and your accounts and understand how to keep them secure and protected. With regard to security, there's really two main concepts. There's authentication, which means you are identifying and proving to the computer who you are and who you say you are. And authorization, the idea that you have access and you are allowed to see and to edit and to engage with whatever site or application you are trying to view. And the way we authenticate ourselves, the way we tell the computer who we say we are usually through these two pieces of information. We have usernames and we have passwords. And the idea here is that usernames are typically public information. It could be something like your first name or maybe a combination of your first name and last name or the like. And then we have passwords, which are a bit more private. And the idea here is that you want to keep these sorts of things to yourself in the way that in order to ensure that you are the only person who can authenticate and authorize as yourself is you, because you're the only person who knows this unique combination of your username and your password. And although it might be hard with many accounts to keep track of all these different types of passwords, I'm going to hopefully help you a little bit today to show you how to go about putting in the strongest and the smartest passwords and how to maintain and keep track of all those passwords. So with regard to having a strong password, you want to basically prevent the idea that potentially someone who is not you could develop and gain access to your tools, could gain access to your devices and your accounts. And in order to prevent this, you want to have what we call a strong password. The ideal here is that you want to be able to have a password so strong that someone who's trying to get in and get access to your information won't be able to, simply because it is so detached and so strong that the information that you include in your password is so unique and so distinct that someone won't be able to discover it by trial and error. So let's go through an example here. Here's a password that I have put in before. The password here is BASE123. BASE 123. And we're going to go ahead through a few tips that I have for all of you to refine this password to make sure that you're including and you're using the strongest of passwords for your information. So the first thing that you want to make sure to keep track of is to have at least 8 characters in length for all your passwords. And the idea here is if you have 8 or more characters, it will be progressively harder for someone to gain access to your information. Now, some websites you might have noticed have even required you at certain points to have a minimum amount of characters in your passwords. But whether or not they do, the recommendation here is to use at least 8 characters included in each of your passwords. So for our example here, which we originally had in BASE123, we're going to upgrade that a little bit to now include the number 4 at the end. So we now have our 8-digit password, BASE1234. And although this is getting better, we're still not 100% where we want to be. The other thing I want to point out here is using a variety of different characters, whether that be lowercase, uppercase, numbers, and symbols. And what this means is having a variety of different types of characters so that you're basically limiting and you're allowing people who are trying to get into your account to take significantly longer to put in all the possible combinations. Because you only have 26 lowercase. If you now use uppercase, you've now doubled that, and digits and punctuation just make it so much harder. So the idea here, we originally had lowercase and numbers. We're going to capitalize that B. It's pretty common to capitalize the first letter in the password. And we're also going to add on the back end an exclamation point, which is our form of punctuation. Although you could use any of the like, whether that be the @ symbol, the number symbol, the dollar symbol, %, or the like. But ideally here, we've now used an uppercase letter. We've used 3 lowercase letters, digits, and a punctuation symbol itself. Now next up, the point here is not to use dictionary words. And the reason why this is important is because someone who's trying to access your information could have access to a file or to a database that includes a lot of dictionary words, and simply by putting that into their computer, they could very easily detect if your password has access or includes a dictionary word. So in order to stay away from that, usually what we try and do is use punctuation symbols or numbers to fill in as as our letters in order to allow us to still have passwords that we could remember and have some sort of resemblance to actual words, but are not going to appear in the dictionary search. So here what we did is we replaced the lowercase a with an @ symbol that you would normally find in an email address like jordan@mittlerseniortech.com. And we've also added a $sign in place of the S, both of which still resemble the letters we're trying to represent, and we still can see this as the word base. But in this idea here, now if a hacker or someone trying to get into your information puts in this sort of code using the word base in the dictionary, they won't actually get the result because you've made alterations to your password itself. Now next up, I want to point out that you shouldn't be using repetitive or sequential characters such as multiple letters in a row, maybe even a sequential order like 1, 2, 3 or ABC, or even a repetitive sequence of digits. So in this case, we originally had 1, 2, 3, 4. If we reorient those numbers a little bit, we get here now 4, 2, 1, 3. But the idea here is that we've altered the sequence and the collection of digits in order to get a password that doesn't have a repetitive or sequential characters. Additionally, I want to point out that we shouldn't be using context-specific words. Very often, people come to me with their password being something like, for Amazon.com, their password being Amazon10. Or even capital A. Even with these alterations, you shouldn't be using context-specific words, which the two main ones being the name of the service itself and also your username. You shouldn't include traces of your username in your password because the username is the public piece of information, and very often people have access to that sort of information because it may include your first name or last name or the like. So your password, you want to make sure it's distinct and separate from both the name of the service, the username, and other context-specific words. Now, this is a hard one because people tend to go about doing this. You shouldn't be using public information. And when I say public, even things that you may not think are public are in fact available online. So putting aside your name, which we mentioned before, even something like a home address or your birthday, although this tends to remain private, you want to hold back from including this sort of information online, because if someone is trying to get into your account, or someone is trying to hack into your data or information, they may very well do some research about you and learn about your home address or birthday, and then go ahead and use those sorts of things in order to guess or predict your password. So you want to hold back from including public information like your name, home address, and birthday in your password itself. And then lastly, I'll point out here, and this is a broad idea, is to use different passwords for each site. As you begin to use more websites and more devices, you're going to have a lot of passwords, sometimes dozens or even hundreds of passwords. And the idea here, it's very common for someone to want to use similar passwords for each of their sites. But the issue here is that if person A gets access to password for website A, they now unfortunately have access to all your information. So you want to hold back from using the same password and using the same sorts of information for multiple websites, multiple accounts, multiple devices, in order to prevent the idea that if someone obtains password for website A, they won't have information and be able to get into your websites and data from other websites additionally. So you want to hold back from that and using different passwords for each site itself. So you could see more broadly what we started with and what we finished with. But the idea here is initially we had less than 8 characters. We didn't have a variety of different characters with the capital and the punctuation. We had a dictionary word, and we also had a sequential sequence of digits like 1, 2, 3, and we now reoriented to be 4, 2, 1, 3. So this is just an example of the way you could take a password that you want to use and make slight alterations so that it becomes something that is harder for someone attempting to get into your account to access your information. So before we wrap up, a few examples. Let's say person A has a password that says Brian12, Kate 5, and he says something like, this password is my kids' names and ages. Now we'll point out, you could pause the video to think about it based on what we said before, but the idea here is that there's two main issues. The first being, we're using public information. we're using information of kids' names and ages, which could be found online. Once you find a last name, you could do a bit more research, and trust me, in a matter of even minutes, you could find information like this available online. And the second thing I'll point out is we're lacking the punctuation marks and the capital letters and the variety of characters by only having 2 that you should have in a password. So we're using public information and we're using different characters. We'll do 2 more examples. This password here says W in lowercase. We have 3 capital S, lowercase t, exclamation mark. And this person says my street address, right? We see West 3rd Street with the exclamation mark at the end. And the idea here is that there are 2 issues I see. We do have a variety of different characters, which is great, but it is a bit too short. And again, we're using public information. We're using public information because a home address is something that could be found online, and it isn't at the 8-character mark that I recommended at the beginning. So you want to ensure that you get rid of that public information and you make it the proper length. And finally, last example, we have 123 CBA ABC 321, and this person says it's a simple pattern, easy to remember. And the idea here, again, is that there's a sequential sequence, there's repetitive characters, and also, again, we're only having lowercase and digits without those capital letters and punctuation marks. So you want to hold back and prevent yourself from using sequential characters and make sure that you use a variety of different characters. Now, you might be asking, if I have all these different passwords and so many different combinations of letters and numbers, and they're so long, how do I go about remembering all these passwords? Well, there's a tool that has been recently developed and becoming more popularly used by people called a password manager, which a lot of your devices already have these technologies built in. And the idea here is that a password manager has a broader password to itself and contains and keeps track of your passwords for all the different sites and logins and information that you use on a daily basis, so that you yourself don't need to remember all your passwords, but rather when you're signing into a site, your password manager will basically fill in the information for you. And this, of course, is encrypted, it's protected, and you're able to use these sorts of tools. So I would first check if you do want to go about using a password manager. A lot of your personal devices may have access to password managers themselves, like an Apple computer may have built into it a password manager for you. Or you can go ahead and download what we call a third-party password manager made by maybe a security company that has designed a certain tool for you to use on your devices, both of which are very feasible options. And you can go ahead and explore different possibilities depending on how secure and private you want to be with your information. So that was a broad introduction to securing your accounts and maintaining privacy and security when it comes to keeping track of your information and making sure that it's not possible for people to go about finding your information via getting into your passwords and usernames, but the types of information that you want to keep private and you want to make sure are strong and protected to prevent these sorts of things from happening. If you have any further questions about this information or anything remotely connected to online safety, feel free to reach out to us at info@mittlerseniortech.com. Or if you want more information or to sign up for more courses with us, please visit mittlerseniortech.com. Thank you for watching.